Hi everybody, this is Dr. Hakkı Dalc. Welcome to the first anatomy lab. Today what we're going to do is we're going to go over the first important bone of the upper limb, which is the clavicle. But before that I'm going to give you general information of the skeleton. So this is our first lab, video lab. And hope it will be useful for you, all you guys. And if you have any questions later on, I'll be here to answer them. Okay, so first of all, in the osteology course, we need to know, and we divide the skeleton into two areas, two parts, which is the axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. And before that, I want you to know that the overall number of bones inside the human body is 206. 206 is an important number, so don't forget that. And saying that we divide the skeleton into two categories, like I said, the appendicular skeleton and the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton is composed of the skull bones, the head bones, and the vertebral column. So these bones are located in the midline. So you have the skull, vertebral column, the rib cage or thoracic cage, the ribs, and then we have the sternum. So these are the axial skeleton. The appendicular skeleton, we have two parts: the appendicle, the appendices, which is the most movable area of the body. We have the upper appendicular and the lower appendicular. Or we also call them the upper limb or upper extremity, and we have the lower limb or lower extremity. So in terms of numbers, the upper limb or upper extremity, we have 32 bones. 27 being in the hand. So in the upper limb we have totally 32 bones. 27 is located in the hand region, and so by saying this, you need to know that the hand is a really important organ because it has the most important the increasing number of bones, and also it also has a lot of muscles that aid in motion of the hand and fingers. So we have 27 bones in the hand, and the rest is in the forearm and arm, which is so 27. We have 2 bones in the forearm, 27, 28, 29. We have 1 bone in the arm region, it's 30, and then pectoral girdle, we have the clavicle and scapula, so 31, 32. So we have, in the upper extremity, we have total 32 bones. However, in the lower extremity, lower limb, we have total amount of 31 bones. So we have 32 on one side, another 32 on the other side, that's 64, and then we have 31 on the lower limb and 31 on the other side, so we have 62 in the lower limb. So 64 in the upper limb, 62 in the lower limb, and 80 makes up the axial skeleton, is made out of 80 bones. So totally there's 206 bones in the human body. Just know that. So in terms of upper limb, we have this shoulder region, and it's primarily composed of this shoulder girdle, what we call the shoulder girdle. And shoulder girdle is composed of 2 important bones: the clavicle, the collarbone, which we will examine in details today, now, after the brief introductory information. So we have the collarbone and the scapula make up the shoulder girdle. Then we have in terms of I'm talking about the upper limb. And then we have the arm region. The arm region is also referred to as brachium, and this brachium is composed of 1 bone, which is called the humerus. And then we have the forearm, which is referred to as antebrachium, and it's composed of 2 bones, the ulnar and radius. And then we have the hand. Then we have the hand region. We have the hand region. Hand region is composed is composed of the wrist, which is the wrist joint. Then we have the palm. The wrist is composed of the carpal bones. The palm region is composed of the metacarpal bones, and the fingers is composed of the phalanges or digits, or fingers is composed of digits. So this is basically the upper extremity that we have in the human body. Okay, so after giving a brief information about the skeletal system, in terms of the upper extremity primarily, of course, let's look at the shoulder girdle. So shoulder girdle is composed of two important bones, the clavicle in the front and the scapula. So the upper limb, folks, is highly movable area, and it joins with the shoulder girdle via these ball and socket joints. So this bone here joins with this bone and makes an articulation, and this bone joins with this bone here, this collarbone, what we call as clavicle. And basically, primarily, my point here is that this clavicle articulates with the axial skeleton. So what happens is that the upper extremity, the upper limb, is basically connected to the axial skeletal by one important joint, which is the sternoclavicular joint. So sternoclavicular joint is what? Is a joint formed by the union or articulation between the sternum or manubrium sternum, with the manubrium of the sternum, and with the sternal end of the clavicle. So we have the sternoclavicular joint, which is also referred to as SC joint, is the only bony joint that connects the upper limb to the axial skeletal. So this is an important information. That's one. Second is that the shoulder girdle and plus the clavicle allows the upper limb to stay in a lateral position, as you can see. So if there wasn't any clavicle present in this area, so your shoulder would not be located in this lateral position, and hence the upper limb will not be allowed to do a whole lot of important motions like flexing, extending your arm, or adducting arm, or rotational movement. So you're swinging your arm, and this is done via because the upper limb is a little bit away from your thoracic cage. Okay, so that's why. So your upper limb, the arm region, is away from the thoracic region, so it does not hit the thoracic ribs on the lateral side when a rotational movement occurs. So when I do this, so my lateral side of my thorax does not interfere with my rotational movement. So this is done primarily by the clavicle, the position of the clavicle. If we look at the functions of the clavicle, so this is one of the most important functions. So it stabilizes the upper limb in that lateral thoracic cage area in order for the upper limb to do proper rotational movements. The second important function, like I said, is that this bone is the only bone with the sternoclavicular joint. This bone connects the upper limb to the axial skeleton. This is second important function of the clavicle. The third important function of the clavicle is that the clavicle transmits the upper limb, the weight of the upper limb, to the axial skeleton. So when you lift or do push-ups or do any kinds of weightlifting type of motion or function, is that what happens is that this weight is transferred through the hand, the forearm, the arm, and from here it's transferred to the scapula, and from here to one of the important ligaments. We're going to talk about this, the coraco-clavicle ligament. Through that, it is transferred to the clavicle, and then from here to the axial skeletal. So basically, clavicle is one of the important intermediate structure that transfers the upper limb weight to the axial skeleton. So these are the three important functions of the clavicle. Okay, so this is the general information of the clavicle. And by the way, clavicle, like I said, is also referred to as collarbone. And another general aspect of the clavicle is that it is an S-shaped bone. Okay, so it's an S-shaped bone. We're going to look at this bone closely, so you will recognize it in a proper detail when you look at it closer. So it's an S-shaped bone, and it's also referred to as a long bone. Okay, so we're going to look at the classification of the long bones. For example, the humerus is long bone. The humerus is located in the brachium in the arm, and also we have the forearm bones in the entobrachium, the ulnar radius. On the medial side, it's the ulnar, and lateral side. In the medial side is the ulnar, and lateral side is the radius. So these are basically long bones, as you can see. It's long, and they have certain characteristics. But although we classify the clavicle as long bone, for instance, one of the things that they don't have is that in long bones they have a medullary cavity, a bone marrow. So inside, in the middle, there's a bone marrow where you have the red marrow and where the red blood cells are being produced. However, in the clavicle, we don't see that. We don't see a bone marrow in the clavicle. This is basically an exception. Although it is referred to as long bone, does not have a bone marrow. Second important feature of clavicle is that this is the first bone that is formed in intrauterine life. So if you look at the whole skeleton, so the first bone to be ossified, as you know, all the bones in intrauterine life, these bones are basically first started with the formation of cartilage. So these are made out of hyaline cartilage, but later on they start to ossify. So the first ossification occurs in the clavicle in intrauterine life, and then this is the last bone that finishes ossification. And this is basically the ossification finishes, or the bone formation finishes in terms of clavicle late, like in 20s. So this is another classified features of the clavicle. Okay, so this is the basically what happens here. I just want you to take a look at the attachment points. So we have the medial side of the clavicle that attaches to the sternum, and then the lateral side of the clavicle attaches to this bone here. And this part of the bone is called the acromion, and this acromion is part of the scapula. So this is the scapula, and this is the sternum. So that's how it attaches, and it's stabilized in this particular area with these articulations. So we have two joints. We have sternoclavicular joint on the medial side, and then we have the acromioclavicular joint on the lateral side. So we have SC joint on the medial side, and then we have the AC joint on the lateral side that attaches with the clavicle. So we have these bony attachments, plus, of course, we also have the muscular attachments that allows also to stabilize the clavicle in these particular positions. And I'm going to talk about the muscular attachments a bit later. So we also have these muscular attachments, and so all these, and we also have, wherever we see the articulation points or the joints, we also definitely have we have to see the ligaments. So I'm going to talk about the ligaments too. So we see ligaments on the medial side in the SC joint, sternoclavicular joint, we also see ligaments around the AC joint, the acromioclavicular joint. We're going to talk about these ligaments a bit later again. Okay, so that's that. What else we can say here? And as you can see in this position, so the sternoclavicular joint over here on the medial side, it is formed by the, like I said, manubrium of the sternum and the sternal head of the clavicle, or the articular facet of the sternal head of the clavicle. But also, in this joint, we also have the first costal cartilage, which also participates in this joint here. So this joint is basically stabilized, and it is really strong because of these three components. So we have the manubrium sternum, we have the articular facet of the clavicle, and then we also have joining to these areas, we have the first costal cartilage, which also attaches to the articular disc inside the joints, and basically all these three units make up the sternoclavicular joint, and which is the sternoclavicular. This is one of the things that you need to remember, is that this joint is one of the strongest joints inside the body, because it carries the upper extremity weight to the axial skeletal. Okay, so and this is stabilized with a certain amount of ligaments. So I don't have the photograph or the models that show these ligaments, but we have the interclavicular ligament that connects the two opposite ligaments, interclavicular ligaments, and we have the sternoclavicular ligament, and we have the costoclavicular. We have three ligaments that stabilizes the SC joint. So let me repeat that. So we have the interclavicular ligament connects one clavicle, and then hooks around with in this notch, a sternum. This is called the sternum notch, and it attaches to the other side of the other clavicle. So this is interclavicular ligament. We have sternoclavicular ligament anterior posterior. It emerges from the sternum to the clavicle on the anterior side, and we have another on the posterior side. We have the anterior and posterior sternoclavicular ligament, and then we have the costoclavicular ligament that connects the first costal cartilage to the clavicle. So all these three important ligaments basically stabilize this important joint, and basically they make it strong. And you don't see or hear a joint dislocation of SC joint. It is very difficult to have a dislocation, because this is really a firm attachment and a really strong joint present among the joints in the human skeleton. Okay, so that's that. Okay, we'll look at the okay. So let's look at the joints over here just a few minutes, so we can see the whole picture here. So now we have the articular facet on the acromial end. So this is the acromial end of the clavicle. So we're going to look at the ends a bit later, but this is the acromial end, and then we have the articular facet in the acromial end that articulates with the acromion of the scapula. So we have, so what we call this is as the AC joint, acromioclavicular joint, which is the referred as AC joint. Okay, so and this joint can be separated. Okay, so in terms of dislocation, we don't call this dislocation. Dislocation is primarily found in the ball and socket joint. We're going to talk about the ball and socket joint between the scapula and the humerus. But this joint, the AC joint, can be separated due to a hit from behind. Okay, so when you have a hit from behind, or if you fall down on your hands, on your palms, and this would push this area. Okay, so you might separate your AC joint. All right, and with these blows and with these hits, the clavicle can be fractured. Clavicle is because of this hole wide of insertions and functions and weight bearing or transmitting functions. So it is prone to fracture in terms of the falling up, when falling down from a tree or falling from the bicycle or a motorcycle or the car. So you might have a bone fracture. And basically what happens is that this fracture usually occurs. So we have, we divide the clavicle, I'm going to talk about that a bit later. We divide the clavicle into three, the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. Okay, we divide the clavicle in two parts, medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. And usually the fracture occurs between these curvatures, between the 2/3, medial 2/3 and lateral 2/3, around about here. The reason why most of the fractures occur around about here on lateral side, where these curvatures occur, is that you have the two important ligaments here, clavicular ligament that connects the coracoid process of the scapula to the clavicle, because these are really strong ligaments, so they hold this area. So, and the next part, you don't have any ligaments, you don't have any stabilizing units. So when a push occurs from the back or the front, so you have the fracture occurs around about here, and this basically corresponds to the area between the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. So this area usually fractures, and basically the two bones basically break and they move either down or up or sideways, whatever. Okay, so this is the most prone areas where you see the fractures. Okay, so what happens is that they just basically screw, they put a plate, and then they connect the two edges, and they screw the plate in, and then connect the two edges together, and that's how they heal together. Okay, so this is the clavicle. What else do I have to say here? Okay, this is about it. So this is the position that you would see the clavicle on the thorax, in the shoulder girdle. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you the independent areas and the positions and locations of the protrusions and the impressions and the tubercles that are present inside or on the clavicle. Okay, so let's go with let's start with that now. Let's come closer and look at the detailed structures. Yes, like I said, folks, the clavicle. So this is the collarbone. Clavicle is an S-shaped. As you can see, it's an S-shaped bone. Okay, a long bone, S-shaped bone. So let's look at the features of the clavicle. So it's basically located horizontally, on the neck, in the neck position of the upper thoracic cage. And if we look at the detailed features of the clavicle, what we see is we have a medial. So we have this part is the medial end of the clavicle. This part is the lateral end of the clavicle. The medial end is also referred to as the sternal end. So this part is the area where it attaches or articulates with the sternum, the manubrium of the sternum. And this part, the lateral part of or lateral end of the clavicle, is also referred to as the acromial end. The reason why is that it attaches with the acromion of the scapula. Don't forget that. Okay. So these are the attachment sites. So, and these are the articular facets, as you can see. So the inner part of here on the medial side, this is the articular facet that attaches to the manubrium of the sternum, and here is the articular facet of the acromial end, that attaches with the acromion. All right. So the most important features is that the sternal end and the acromial end has a different morphological characteristic. Is that the sternal end is kind of round, as you can see. As you can see, it's kind of round. All right. And what we say is that this is a quadrangular shaped. So the sternal end, the medial end of the clavicle, is round, kind of round, and it is quadrangular shaped. However, the lateral end, the acromial end, is flat, as you can see. So this is a flat. So the lateral part, the acromial end, is, as you can see, it's flat. So this is flat on the lateral side. On the medial side, it's round. All right, it's right. It's quadrangular shaped, and on the lateral side, it's flat. The acromial end is flat. The reason why these are important is that we need to know the right and left clavicle. Is this right clavicle or left clavicle? So that's one thing that you need to remember. So the medial end side is round or quadrangular shaped, quite round, and the lateral side is flat. That's one. The second thing you need to remember is that, like I said, it's an S-shaped, all right? It's an S-shaped. So we divide the clavicle medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. So this is the medial 2/3. The medial 2/3, as you can see, it is bended anteriorly. What we call this is a convex anteriorly, and lateral 1/3 is concave anteriorly. So this is a convex surface or shape, and this is a concave shape anteriorly. If you have hard time, which is what is convex, how the concave looks like, just remember that the medial 2/3 is bent forward. Okay, so this is it just faces and bends forward. However, the bend of the lateral 1/3 it faces back. Okay, but scientifically, what we say is that the medial 2/3 is convex anteriorly, the lateral 1/3 is concave anteriorly. So this is convex anteriorly, and this is concave anteriorly. So this is the second important characteristic of the clavicle. You need to know in order to say which is which, right or left. That's second. Third thing that you need to remember is that the surface. So we have the superior surface, okay, and then we have the inferior surface. So the superior surface is smooth. It has smooth surface. It is smooth, and the inferior surface is rough. So that's another third important criteria of the clavicle. Therefore, by using these three criteria, we need to say which side of the clavicle is this located. Is it right clavicle or left clavicle? So this could be either, this could be left, right. This could be left. Why? Because if this is the medial, so let's say, okay, so let's say this is the midline. Let's say this is the sternum here. All right, that's a sternum. Okay, so the sternal head is round. Correct, that's one thing. The smooth surface that is at the top, that's second criteria. And the third criteria is the medial 2/3 of its convex anteriorly, or it's bent forward. But however, we can also do this. Let's say this is right clavicle. Is that correct? Could this be a right clavicle? We can by two criteria we can say yes, but one criteria we say no. Why? Because if we say this is right, so this is sternum. Okay, don't get confused. So the round part, the sternal part is round, right? It's on the medial side. That's one criteria. It fits one criteria. The second criteria is the medial 2/3 faces forward, or is the convex faces forward or faces anteriorly. That's also correct. But the third criteria doesn't meet. The third criteria. What was the third criteria? The third criteria was that the superior surface was smooth. You see, this is not smooth. So this is rough. So rough surface should be inferiorly located. So this doesn't fit. So this is not right. Right. So so this is not right. So it has to be left. So this is your left clavicle. Why? Because the round surface, sternal surface on the medial side, the smooth surface is at the top, a second. Third is the anterior 2/3 is convex forward, or it's bent, faces forward. So that's three criteria that makes the position of the clavicle inside the body. Okay, so that's how we locate or classify the clavicle into right or left. So let's look at the other features that we can see on the clavicle. So we talked about the ends, all right. And the other thing is that, so on the top part, smooth part, we don't have much tubercles or tuberosities or impressions. What do we have is some features on the inferior surface. Let's look at the inferior surface now. So this is the inferior surface. So if we look at the inferior surface, as you can see here, so let's go from the medial to lateral. So on the medial side, on the inferior surface, we have these ovoid-shaped area. This is like a tubercle, or it is also referred to as impression. In some textbooks or atlases, it's called tubercle. In some textbooks, it's called an impression. This is the impression for costoclavicular ligament. So what happens here is the costoclavicular ligament basically comes here and attaches to this tubercle, and this tubercle or impression is called the impression for costoclavicular ligament. And this is one of the important, like I said earlier, important ligaments that stabilizes the sternoclavicular joint. One of the important ligaments. The other thing on the inferior surface is that we have a groove here. This groove is a subclavian groove. As the name implies, is that the same muscle is located in this particular area, is a subclavius muscle. So subclavius muscle occupies this groove, subclavian groove. And just next to the subclavian groove, I don't know if it's clear from there, but there's a dot or a small little hole, which is also called a nutrient foramen. And through this nutrient foramen, we have these nutrient arteries and veins passes through this foramen and enters the bone and supplies the bone. You have the nutrient foramen. Okay, if we go to, so this is the medial third bent, and then we have the lateral 1/3 area. And in the lateral 1/3 area, we have two important landmarks. One, we have the tubercle, conoid tubercle. So we have a protrusion or a bony particle that comes out, and this is conoid. This is referred as conoid tubercle, and conoid ligament basically attaches to this tubercle. Just next to it, we have this trapezoid line, and again, trapezoid line, another ligament attaches to this area, which is called the trapezoid ligament. Basically, I'm gonna show these two ligaments a bit later, but these. We have a ligament, what we call as coracoclavicular ligament, and basically conoid and trapezoid are parts of this coracoclavicular ligament, and I'm going to show you those two. So basically, conoid tubercle, the conoid part of the coracoclavicular ligament attaches, or we can also call them as conoid ligament, and then we have the trapezoid line in this area, and then trapezoid line, where the trapezoid ligament, or what we also call the trapezoid part of the coracoclavicular ligament. So these are the impressions and tubercles on the inferior surface of the clavicle. Okay, so let me show you the basically the ligaments. For instance, if you look at this, okay, so it's like this. Let's look at the ligaments. I don't know if you can see it, but so this is the clavicle here. So what we see here is the lateral part, and this is the scapula, by the way, right? So this is the acromion of the scapula. So basically, the acromial end of the clavicle attaches to the acromion of the scapula. So we have the AC joint. What we see here is AC joint, the AC joint, the acromioclavicular joint. All right. So what we see here is the ligaments. So we have the so this is basically the joint capsule. And by the way, I forgot to tell you that this joint is plain joint, so you don't have much motion here, just like gliding type of motion here in the AC joint. However, in the sternoclavicular joint, there's a high movement of the SC joint, which is the sternoclavicular joint, which we have. I'll show you in the skeletal. This is also important joint. So let's come back to the ligaments. So we have the acromioclavicular ligament here. So we have the superior inferior acromioclavicular ligament. So we have this is the superior acromioclavicular ligament, and this is the inferior acromioclavicular ligament. And this ligament basically stabilizes this joint capsule. It's a very important ligament. And the other important ligament, like I told you earlier, so we have so if you look at this area, I don't know if you can see it, but so we have, this is the lower surface, the inferior surface of the clavicle. So we have on the lateral end, lateral 1/3 of the clavicle, we had the conoid, tubercle, and trapezoid line. So this conoid tubercle, as you can see, this ligament arises and attaches to the coracoid process of the scapula. So this is and another ligament here, and this is basically refer to this as conoid ligament. And then we have the trapezoid line. So this ligament comes from this trapezoid line attached to the coracoid process. So this is the coracoid process of the scapula. So basically we have the conoid ligament and the trapezoid ligament, and basically these two ligaments are parts of the coracoacromial ligament. So this is coracoacromial ligament. On the lower part, we have the conoid ligament, and on the lateral part, which is like a strap or triangular, quadrangular shape, which is the trapezoid ligament, and basically these are parts of coracoclavicular ligaments. Okay, so those are the two important ligaments. So in the AC joint, what we see here, so we saw these two ligaments, the conoid ligament, trapezoid ligament. The acromioclavicular ligament is over here. It's superior inferior. One of the ligament that we see here is this ligament here. This ligament connects, basically, it's not part of the clavicle, but it stabilizes the AC joint, which is it connects the acromion to the coracoid process of the scapula, which is the coracoacromial ligaments. So we have this coracoid process is really important. This coracoid process is part of the scapula, and it's really important to stabilize the joints of the shoulder. So we have the coracoacromial ligament here, and then we have the conoid ligament, trapezoid ligament, and then we have the acromioclavicular ligament. So all these ligaments basically stabilize the AC joint. Okay, so AC joint is also a really important joint. Okay, so so that's about it. Let's okay. Yeah, that's about it. So let me just show you the sternoclavicular joint on the skeleton for a minute. Like I said, the sternoclavicular joint is a important joint of the upper, concerning the upper limb in terms of motion and actions. And this is basically, it is referred to as double plane joint. Basically, the new information is the new textbook. They refer this as double plane joint, but previously, it also, if you look at the classical textbooks, it is also referred as saddle type of joint. So no big deal. Basically, what happens is that we see a lot of motions that this joint allows. Is one of the important motion is that like if you look at me like so you have this motion here, you have the protraction, and you move your shoulder backwards, it's retraction, and you move your shoulder upwards, it's elevation and depression, and then slightly you can do a rotational movement. So basically all these movements is done via the sternoclavicular joint. So we have all these round, sliding, and movements is allowed. It's like a saddle type. It's like a ball and socket type of joint, but it does not resemble a ball, socket, or saddle. but it does. It has these important motions, and so previously it was regarded as a saddle type, but in the recent articles and textbooks, it is referred to as double plane joint, but no big deal. So all these important motions are done around the sternoclavicular joint, which is really important in the human body, and which allows the free movability and of the upper limb, like I say, protraction, retraction, elevation, depression, and certain amount of rotational movements is done around this important joint. Okay, so I think that's about it. So we finished up with the clavicle today, and our next video we're gonna start looking at, and we're gonna show and discuss one of the important bones of the pectoral girdle would be the scapula. So hang around. Let's start with the scapula later on. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye bye.